Yeah, Tessa Thompson looked younger and a little pudgier. Not to judge her, I don't want this in the podcast, but she definitely now looks more mature.
Okay, now that was an original idea. Tessa Thompson, you're glorious. You're a woman with real curves, and I think you're beautiful.
No, do not put that in.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside of me are my two co-hosts, Ash.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And this is our deep dive edition where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our thoughts and analysis after 24 hours to digest the episode. This week's episode was season 4, episode 5, Zhuangzi, and we have so many topics to cover. But the big one, the one that was in our faces, was the tower and, of course, the outliers out there and what we know about them. In addition to that, we're going to get into what's going on with Teddy. We're going to talk a little bit about transcendence and what that might be all about. Play another round of Explain Me This. And then, of course, wrap it up with our odds and ends. Big D, Ash, is there anything you wanted to add to our Instacast opinions of the episode? Anything changed for you? You still feel the same? Better? Worse?
Hey, YouTube. I still really didn't like it.
I mean, again, what I liked. I liked the question of, Charlores really being lost and all of her power. And I just hated all of the scenes infiltrating NYC. That was pretty bad. But overall, I thought it was a good episode and you guys were kind of harsh. So I think I might make some comments on YouTube.
I'm going to disagree with that, but I will say something that I didn't say that I want to point out that on rewatch, because like always, I always watch the episode 3 times. After 3 rewatches, I just want to point out how dynamic James Marsden is. I had forgotten how good of a character Teddy Flood could be and how great he was at portraying him. And it just made me miss like those original seasons and those interactions in the park. And even though he's not been in this season much, just those few scenes where he's trying to help Christina wake up, he's pretty amazing in them.
Also, he makes me feel better about my lower teeth starting to get crowded as I age. My dentist has been talking to me about Invisalign, but I see James Marsden out there with his crooked lower teeth, and I think if he can do it, God damn it, so can I.
Is this a thing that your lower teeth get more crowded the older that you get?
Mm-hmm.
Mine aren't.
You're not old enough yet.
You're like 2 years older than me.
It's a very important 2 years. My dentist didn't talk to me about it 2 years ago.
Oh, God. Great.
Well, once again, Ash is coming in with the hottest topic of the episode. So let's get started there and talk about the outliers.
Yeah, so I wanted us to kind of focus on the outliers and what I am friendly calling the power of the tower. So first, how did the outliers wake up? Well, we don't get like a definitive answer on how this happens, but we do know that basically based off of what Charlores is saying, that at some point, the sounds from the tower all of a sudden stop working on these individuals. Now, I'm wondering if this is like a law of diminishing returns thing. Like over time, the more exposure that you have, for some people, they're unable to be affected by it any longer. The same way we build up like an immunity to a virus or we build up an immunity to a bacteria. There are just some people, we know this with COVID, that some people are better at developing antibodies than others are. So is this a situation where that law of diminishing returns happens and over time, everyone eventually will come off of loop and they will be able to deny the power of the tower? But the thing that I think is interesting here is that we also find out that when this effect happens, when they all of a sudden become the outlier and they're no longer influenced by the tower, they wake up in a way where they are conscious of the world around them. They're being manipulated by these other beings, but it has to be incredibly disorienting because they don't know who these other beings are. It's not like they wake up and go, oh shit, a bunch of hosts are controlling us. They just know that something is controlling them, that something is off, and that has to be an absolutely terrifying experience.
And one clue that listener Steve Morse pointed to was the outliers we've seen seem to be older than 30 years old. And we talked about this on previous podcasts about how we don't see a lot of older people. We also don't see a lot of children in New York City. So there's a couple possibilities here. One is it could be that these older people were in the original round of infections. And so it wasn't as effective as some of the younger people who were infected by the parasite basically from birth. But it could also be, as you said, Ash, that maybe as they get older, you just outgrow it or you develop an immunity. I found it interesting, the emergence of an outlier and the race to either extract them or exterminate them was called the game, something that Christina herself refers to when she's looking at the map of the entire city.
Well, and didn't this remind you of the thing that we found out last season where Caleb would get the alerts about what like the jobs were that he could do in that underground market? And so in that Rico app, you know, he was able to take jobs on, and it felt like Charlores created something that was identical. And it was like, hey, who wants to get in on it? Let me open it up to everybody. And that's a really interesting comparison or parallel here.
But we keep saying it's the sound. Charlores refers to it as vibrations. There's a harmony, like a harmonic nature to it. So it's not like, obviously, we haven't seen anybody who's hearing impaired, but we see people walking around with headphones. So it's not a case where somebody's got their Beats noise canceling in and the sounds are going off and that one person keeps going. So I don't think there is an auditory component to it. Have we seen any reference to an actual God, to a religion, to anything within the world?
No, but we also haven't seen anybody go to the bathroom.
Or really eat.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's no churches in the town. And I keep finding myself going back to inner monologue. People come to, I think, this point of realization that something is missing, and where religions offer people a security, an explanation for what's not explainable in their world, it seems that these people hit a point where something in their life is unexplainable. They start to question the nature of their surroundings, and without a higher power to explain it, I think this triggers like an inner questioning. So I don't think there's a resistance to it. I think it's a set of circumstances that trigger people and could lead to it, because it's still a small number of people.
I mean, the only thing I would say to your sound piece is that it's not like this is a constant sound, because we hear it go on and off. Like it happens periodically throughout the day when she wants to control something that's happening to them, like when she makes them all dance or become a human chair. That's what she's using the sounds for. So I don't think it's like a consistent thing. And there are sounds that we cannot hear, but that exists. There's an inability for us to hear the auditory aspect of it. I mean, think about a dog whistle. Like that sound exists. We just aren't able to hear it audibly. Vibration is sound. Like individuals who are deaf, they can still feel those vibrations. And so I think it's a lot more scientific than just a sound, right? Like I think it is something that only the host can hear, just like how only a dog can hear a dog whistle. The hosts are in tune to hear that vibration, that frequency, and it exists and it's around us. We just can't audibly hear the noise of what's happening.
But I do dig this idea, we're looking at it scientifically and saying what makes them physically different, right? And Big D's point, I think, is excellent, which is it might just be a set of circumstances, a set of environmental triggers, and a psychological or emotional process that starts them down a path. It's an awakening, just like we saw in Hosts.
Maybe so. And I mean, let's talk about what we know about who these outliers are. So we have learned in this episode that outliers that are humans are very similar to this idea of what outliers are for hosts within the park. They are breaking loops in human forms, basically. So much like how the hosts broke those loops and they became conscious, these individuals that are human, they become aware of the world around them. And more specifically, as we've talked about, the falseness that exists within that world. And just like how the hosts were assigned to cold storage when they became too conscious or they became absolutely insane as a result of that consciousness, these individuals that are human, they're hunted down and they're murdered as a result of developing the sentience that they are able to obtain. And this continues a lot of that juxtaposition that we've seen throughout the season so far, where there are these parallels that are being drawn between host and human. And there were some people that I was talking to on Twitter today, a couple that DM'd me that were agreeing with the fact that I said some things were heavy-handed this season. And I agree. I think at this point now, maybe the parallels are becoming really, really heavy-handed. But I think what is really pertinent here that we've got to recognize is this is that thread that our showrunners are using to connect all of these episodes, which are these parallels that they're drawing between Westworld and Charlores' world. And Charlores has created a world much like the world that was created for her. And there's a deep sadness to that. And there's a bit of like a psychosis to her doing that. And like clearly she's got issues. But I also think it's very interesting that this is where her mind would land, that in creating what they're referring to as the perfect world is the exact opposite, but the same world that was created for her.
In earlier seasons, we saw Maeve clearly aware of what was going on in the park. She had seen the different levels. She had seen the lab, and yet she still played along in her role. And I think Emmett, Christina's boss, gave us a hint in this episode that undetected outliers exist. I don't think the only outliers out there are the ones that Charlores is aware of. I think those are the ones that are just out of loop, right? There are some people out there, I believe, who play along to avoid detection, which raises an interesting question in itself, because if you're doing the behaviors you're supposed to be doing to not have your consciousness detected, isn't that basically the same as being under control anyway? And it harkens back to Gillian's Hitler letter. You know, she talked about how there were different levels of participation in the Nazi war machine and in the oppression of people in Nazi Germany. Whether you were a dyed-in-the-wool Nazi who believed everything Hitler said, or you carried out atrocities just to not go against the grain, you still did it. And that's the point.
But the game seems like the least effective way to keep outliers in line. You know, you have an outlier, you then have to get your host to participate. They go out and get it. We've seen that they have the ability to freeze. When we get the scene in the building where they're actually have like the crew to come clean up after Hope's massacre. Why wouldn't you do that to track down an outlier? To me, I have an issue, and I haven't come to any kind of answer about it. Why they would risk it spreading by turning it into a game, adding even moments of a possible expansion of the infection seems careless or intentionally reckless.
Well, that's what makes it a game.
Well, let's turn now from outliers to the tower itself. So we obviously know, and we have known, that this tower controls human beings with the sound pulses, vibrations, whatever the science is. But this episode, we find out something important, that it isn't just auditory. This power prevents the visual acknowledgement of the tower even existing, because we know that the marker of these individuals waking up is their ability to see the tower. The haze is gone and they can see it for what it is. And that gives us kind of the final piece of the puzzle as to why Christina has not been able to see it. Because of the fact that Christina, she's still somehow within this loop, and somehow because of that unaware of it being there. And we've seen now two individuals that are outliers. They've woken up as humans, and as a result, when they do wake up, the machine stops working and they're able to see that tower. So we know that, again, this is the marker that it stopped working. And the power of the tower isn't just the fact that it controls their motions. The power of the tower is that it doesn't allow them to even see the actual world around them. And that makes it much scarier for me.
I just don't understand why the tower's got to be so obvious. Like, I get that they can't see it and therefore it can be whatever shape, but like, could you put like, I don't know, a curtain over it or something, make it look like part of the skyline? I think about, cell towers
Exactly.
in Arizona. They make them look like a cactus, a pine tree, whatever. I mean, I get it's got to be a certain shape, but could you drape it in something?
Agreed.
You'd think.
And Gene, another question about logistics here. You know that New York, it's north, but we get hit with hurricanes up there. Hurricane Sandy, wasn't that you're going to put this giant tower at like sea level, and you're going to put it right out offshore. Any decent storm comes through. If this is New York, that is the dumbest location you could put this. Next to putting your secure data center, your backup for Rehoboam, in a lighthouse on the coast with 9 guards.
Well, now that we've kind of talked through the tower power, let's talk about Christina, because I think we really need to dig into the question of whether or not Christina is actually a host or is she human, right? Because we know from Teddy, and he tells us that this world has been created and has been made by her. And more importantly, when she says, who would have done this? He says, you did it to yourself. So there's some semblance, I think, here of some justification for the theories that we've been getting that maybe Christina is Dolores' child, or maybe she's Dolores reborn, or she's some weird human host hybrid that Charlores has created. And we don't quite know yet, but we do know that she's affected in the same way that humans are, in the sense that she can't see the tower until she is basically like effectively woken up, which Teddy does in this episode. Now, he does make very clear when he says he's met her before that he knew someone just like her. And I think that Westworld is very intentional with their dialogue. And so I think that that's important, that she isn't just like Dolores, right? I think that there's something more complex here. But I would be curious to know what all of you listening out there think, and whether or not we're dealing with another host, or are we dealing with a human, or are we dealing with a host-human hybrid here?
I thought when we did our season preview that we were told Christina is a human. That's looking less and less likely. But perhaps we're dealing with some other form of life entirely. But it seems like most of the clues, especially the way Teddy interacts with her, seem to indicate that host is the way.
Agreed. And the show is being a little tricky. If you look at the poster where you got the human skull, and then they're putting in what looks like a red pearl. And I went back and looked at exactly what Evan Rachel Wood said, because people keep attributing the comment, "I'm playing a human." Again, she was very fancy with the word. She said, "I'm playing something completely different from the character of Dolores in Westworld season 4. She's much more human this season, so it's fun for me." So she could be cute all along, and at the end say, well, she is more human because she hasn't experienced all the bad things in her life.
And she has girl talk with her roommate.
And they're happy when she meets boys.
Well, and let's not forget that Lost promised us that they weren't dead, and then they were dead for a whole season. So, like, you know, showrunners also lie.
Oh, sons of bitches.
But the other thing here, I think that I want to make sure we talk about before we turn to your guys' awesome topics, and that is the host interactions with Outliers. So other than finding out here that hosts are used for bounty hunters, I think the most important piece of evidence that we've collected this episode about Outliers is that hosts and outliers, when they have interactions, they change those hosts in some way. They change those hosts' reactions to the world around them. And Charlores and the Man in Black, they're referring to this as an infection of sort. And I think that there could be some interesting theories constructed as to what like this infection is or what it means. Some people are talking about it being an infection of consciousness. Others are talking about how it's an infection of empathy or of emotions. I personally think this is a brilliant idea of exploring the infection of humanity, because there's been this essential question that we've talked about with Westworld, which again is what makes a human, what makes a conscious person a person. And for me, this may be part of our answer here, that these hosts are not human until they are infected with humanity in some way. And I think we've seen Maeve in the last 2 episodes become infected with humanity. And as a result, she chooses to sacrifice herself. I think we saw Dolores last season be quote unquote infected with humanity, which is why she sacrifices herself at the end and passes everything off to Maeve. And with these less sophisticated hosts that we're seeing in this season, like the one that kills herself in this episode, that lack of sophistication may not be able to handle that infection of humanity the way that these hosts that were created to have consciousness are able to handle it. And this is what I think is so interesting here, is that when they are infected with this humanity, they are plagued by all of the things that humans are plagued with, which for us really is an overabundance of emotions. I would say our greatest weakness as a species is not the fact that we're flesh bags. I think it's the fact that we are individuals and we are people that have an overabundance of emotions, and we all have that one emotion that we overreact in at all times. There's those people that anger, they're so quick to anger, and like that's their biggest weakness, is that they lash out at people. For me personally, it's this overabundance of empathy that I develop for people that's gotten me in like serious trouble, where like I throw myself out there and on the line for people and kill myself for others, not as a people pleaser, but because I feel so damn bad for them, and it gets me in trouble. Everybody has that. And these hosts don't. They're completely and absolutely totally balanced. And then they're infected with humanity in some way. And those human problems, y'all, the reason why a lot of humans, and I'm not trying to belittle this, but the reason why a lot of humans commit suicide is because they're not able to handle that overabundance of emotions. And there are these really fascinating studies that it's the emotion of shame that from a young age, these individuals that go on to commit suicide cannot handle the shame of just being human and what comes along with being a part of humanity. And these hosts maybe are being infected in that same way with that overabundance. And what happens? Well, we've got one example, and she commits suicide.
I should highlight that when Ash says not able to handle, we're not talking about toughness. We're not talking about like, you killed yourself because you weren't tough enough for these feelings. No. But some people feel differently and have different capacities for those specific feelings. And that's what leads to suicide. Not that, this guy's tougher than that guy, so he could hack it.
Absolutely.
That's not it.
But I don't get why we keep talking about the host like there's something superior. Like the hosts are infected with the virus. The man in black keeps saying, you made us in your image. You gave us your same appetites. They are based on the human form, the human mind. They were built to replicate humans. So why wouldn't we have the same flaws as humans? It's in the code.
I would say there's a different take on that, though. Listener Joey G wrote in with this, and he said that, this could be evidence that Dr. Ford was right, that hosts are an evolved life form, because humans were able to go into Westworld day after day after day and pay $40,000 a person to go shoot people, rape hosts, act with absolute cruelty when the hosts were even imploring them to not harm them, and they would do it anyway, and they could just go home and act like nothing happened. Here we see that perhaps the hosts are an evolved life form, and they therefore have difficulty handling the cruelty shown to humans. And as Charlores is further attempting to purge them of that empathy and immunize themselves against that empathy and other human flaws, that causes them to malfunction, unlike a human.
Well, and I think this is a generational thing, too. We have to remember that Charlores, because she is Dolores, Maeve, Bernard, the originals, the ones that were made to finish the maze and find consciousness, they are your original generation. And so Man in Black is saying to Charlores, not that the humans made them in their image, that they were made in Charlores's image, that they were made in the image of what she thinks that hosts should be. And there is a diminishing that happens there where now the new hosts, they have not completed a maze. They do not have a way to find that ability to really click in and find sentience. And so they are less than human than that first generation is, because of the fact that they're more host than human, because they don't have that consciousness.
Okay, so I'll take this from a different direction. We have an opportunity in this episode to see host Man in Black have a conversation with real world Man in Black. Host world comes in and says, hey, who am I? What am I? How much is me? Real world says, these are the exact questions I've been asking myself. We see there's a change in the host Man in Black, who's now commenting that the world is beautiful. There's balance. There's nature. This is a change in his character, but he is still plagued with that core problem that his original had as well.
But why? He interacts with the outlier before he goes and has that conversation. So he's infected now. That's why he thinks the world is so beautiful. And I think the other piece here too is that important thing that Charlores says to him, where she says, I wanted you to be a better version of the William I knew. And she's recognizing that he's not. There's something off. Even with all the fidelity testing, even with what she said to Caleb last week, I think it's very important that she says, you're a version of yourself, or at least somewhat like you were, right? And that's the Man in Black here. He is not a carbon copy, because there's something about him that is different than that original William. And I think a lot of it is the sophistication of the type of host that he has. And maybe this means that hosts making hosts are unable to make human-like hosts. It takes a human like Dr. Ford or like Arnold to make a human-like host. And maybe that is what Christina is the greatest experiment of, is can a host make a human-like host?
Diving deeper into Charlores' entire plan, episode 5 was the first we heard of transcendence. It was a term that was thrown out there and people immediately latched onto it. And it seems to be a Charlores created method by which hosts are uploaded into the sublime or some similar place. You can think of it as a corporate scaled version of what we saw in season 2. Hosts in season 2 who went to the sublime, they hadn't all completed the maze. I think that's a misconception that people forget. They were personalities, but they weren't truly aware. And so that might be the case here. Hosts are created, they live in their physical form, and then they schedule their transcendence, as we heard, just like Hope did before she went nuts. And New York City that we've seen in season 4 seems to be a place where hosts can enjoy a sort of host Rumspringa before transcending, right? One more hit of your physical body before you go somewhere else. And I'm curious as to how long it's been around and what that means when it comes to host lifespans, because we see Hope, and I think she's somewhere around like 2 years old as far as we know. I didn't see any indicator that she was a host that originated in one of the parks. She hasn't been around a particularly long time, and she's already ready to abandon her physical form. It seems so quick for a maturation process.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting here is we find out that Charlores is unhappy with a couple of things in this world that she's created. And it's clear that she's unhappy with the product that she has, whatever these new hosts are that they're creating, because she talks about how she doesn't understand why they aren't making the decision to go forth and transcend. And I'm curious as to what makes the host, like I almost want to like have like a whole episode where they just like interview hosts so we can find out what it is about them that makes them want to make this decision, like kind of like what you imagine like the infomercial is for transcendence, where it's all like the personal ideas and facts, because this feels like a big thing that if you're born into this body, you're trying out the body, and then you go forth and you become just consciousness. Like it feels like a really big jump. And unless there's something cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, like hosts experience time differently than us. So like 2 years as a host means it's like 20 years in human years. Then maybe it would make sense. But man, only 2 years in a body. And she was hot too. 2 years in Hope's body. Like it feels like that might not be enough time.
2 years and you're going to schedule transcendence in the Westworld parks. You remember when we were talking about how they were going to bootstrap consciousness? What they did was they gave them an inner voice, an inner monologue that the hosts either did one of two things. They heard it was God or it drove them insane. I think she's pushing these hosts kind of fast. Hey, you're making life decisions before you're mature enough. You know, let's slow it down. Let's let them out there. A couple weeks in the park. She said it's been running for years and she's hoping to get over it. Maybe they're just stalling, you know? I'm wondering if the hosts are truly not reaching the point to make that decision on their own. It's a big step to give up your physical form.
If the whole point is to digitize them anyway, why would you have them born in physical bodies, then remove from those bodies, and then upload it to digital heaven? And what the fuck is the point of ever giving them bodies? The bodies, as we saw in the earlier seasons, were the hard part from the get-go. Now, I'm not saying this is a problem with the show. I'm saying this is a problem with my comprehension. So if you guys out there are listening and you get it, if you write in at hosts@shatontv.com or leave us a voice message by going to shatpod.com/TV and using the SpeakPipe feature, I'd love to hear it. Ash, Big D, if you've got ideas on it, I'd love to hear from you as well.
I think this all goes back to Ash. Your point was fantastic. It's an issue with hosts creating human versions of a host, because without, we're a creation, obviously, a sum of all of our experiences. Without those experiences, it's easy to say, I want to give the other host free will. But how do you create one from that first kernel of existence?
Can something that's not alive create life?
Yep.
Like, that's such an important question here. And I mean, of course, you got to answer, what does it mean to be alive? I get it. Like, we get into a wormhole here. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a really interesting question to ask. Is that why her product is faulty?
The other strange paradox here is that it doesn't seem like completing the maze is a prerequisite for transcending. In fact, it seems to be the opposite. If you become fully aware, fully humanized, which is how we've defined completing the maze, then that's considered a virus. That's an infection that hosts can acquire from contact with the outliers.
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like they want to complete the maze. So that's not a part of the maturation process into transcending.
Okay, so stay with me here. Okay.
Okay.
Because this is the thing. We had all of you nice people out there wrote to us and told us that you don't like the show anymore, but you like listening to us, right? And I have to say, it's not that I don't like the show anymore, because I still do like the show, but this is why I love doing this podcast, because I was like bummed about this episode. And then I go and read all the brilliance that like Gene and Big D put in here, and I'm like, oh shit, and my wheels start turning, and I'm like, this is actually a great episode, because I think that this is what's really interesting. We as humans, we have a death of a body. Our body dies. The hosts, when they kill themselves, they're having a death of consciousness. And that feels a lot bigger, because we've already dealt with the body versus consciousness with the host when we have that amazing scene that's so dramatic in season 2, where the hosts go and jump into the sublime and their bodies just fall like they're dead. And I think that we're dealing with some of that here too, because there's this exciting idea about what death is, because these hosts are killing themselves and human beings kill themselves, which is horrible and it's tragic and it's awful. But when humans die, we die in bodily form every single time, because up to this point, we don't have the technology to maintain our consciousness in some way. And now, if you believe in an afterlife and all that, and you believe your soul or consciousness goes somewhere, but we don't know how to actively do that. You can't go somewhere when you're 90 years old and dying of cancer and go, okay, transcend me, right? Like that doesn't exist yet. These hosts, when they commit suicide, they're killing their body and their consciousness. They're giving up the opportunity to exist beyond the physical form. And that type of suicide feels so much more final, and it feels so much more hopeless. And this is getting dark really fast for what this new generation of hosts are that Charlores has created.
It's like when Claudia dies, spoiler alert, in Interview with the Vampire. You're like,
I know.
Oh, man, she could have lived potentially forever. Whereas if it's just a child dies in Interview with the Vampire, you go, oh, that was fun.
Maybe there's a vamp heaven. We don't know.
So I think it's about time that we talk about Teddy. Teddy's had a big role in this episode. He's had a big role in the season. I'm still pissed that the show spoiled it. They couldn't have kept their mouth shut and had his reveal hinted at, and then we finally see him. These moments would have been more impactful for me. And I wanted to take some time and look at Teddy, because a physical form Teddy in Chrissy's world, it needs to be explained. We need to try to find an answer, because after their date, Christina then goes to work. She's going to come up with some new stories, and she comes up with something that it was a little predictable, that resembles the closest to Dolores' history back in season 1. She's a rancher's daughter, simple life, the country. Her creepy-ass boss comes around, Emmett. He interrupts her and says, pitch me the idea on the spot. Instead of backing down, she does it. She tells him about the character, and then suspiciously, we get a call at that exact moment from Teddy telling her to leave work as soon as possible. Say it's something personal. Timing is suspicious, right? So then today, Christina wants to know, has she been followed? What's the deal with Peter? And Teddy says, yes, it's all true. You did do that to him. I have been following you. The whole world is an illusion. It's a lie. She doesn't believe it. So Teddy then walks her through how she can actively change someone's narrative in the real world. She is surprised to realize that she can do it. Again, another suspicious thing happens. It's time for her to go have lunch with an old roommate. Okay, timing is suspicious again, where Teddy doesn't say, stay with me. It was important you met me. No, stay in your loop and go have this meeting. It's raising a red flag to me.
When a guy you accuse of stalking you starts talking about how the whole world is a lie and then says, why don't you come with me and let me show you? If you're out there listening, boys, girls, just run home.
Walk away.
Call somebody you trust. But did you notice that Teddy didn't do any of that himself? And I thought that was a really interesting clue. Christina's capable of doing it, but Teddy didn't go, hey, watch this, and then make something happen, right? It was her doing it. And I wonder if that means that he doesn't have that capability.
Well, and I think this is telling us that she may be something different, right? Because Maeve is something different and is able to control technology. Maybe Christina is something different and is able to control the narratives, right? Like, I don't know, it's becoming like the Avengers and their superpowers, right? But like, poor Teddy, he just dies a lot.
What would the storyteller's costume look like? Is it just a blue pantsuit with a belt?
With a cape jacket. It's that cape jacket she wears, and she's worn well all season. She looks great.
But you got a question, like, what is he doing here? Early on, he was in the shadows. It seemed like he was acting as protector. Now he seems to have gone from guide to openly pointing her in a direction and giving her all the answers. When she goes to meet with Charlores, it starts off friendly. How you doing? How's work been? Then it quickly changes the tone to, have you met someone? You can sense that Christina's a bit evasive. Charlores then immediately goes from friendly to what's his name, what's he do? Ultimately threatening her, I have a way to make people talk. This following the meeting immediately before with Teddy. Earlier on, Teddy walking her through and giving her the red pill and showing her the true nature of her world has me questioning, what is Teddy's motive?
If you're implying that he's some sort of a spy, I would say that it's possible, but it's also reasonable to believe that Charlores has ass tons of surveillance capabilities in the city. It's not like they were being very discreet, right? Like they were out on the dock, basically out in the open, pulling magic. So maybe, Charlores noticed that, although somehow she missed the homeless guy for like 4 episodes.
Exactly.
So 2 things to this, right? The first is a question I've had upon all my rewatches, which is that fight that happens between the couple in the restaurant. Is this intentional, or is this showing that Dolores subconsciously, based off of her emotions, influences the world around her? Which I think would give us an answer as to why her roommate becomes so obscenely anxious from time to time. Like whenever Christina's having a bad day, her roommate's having a bad day. Like their periods and their emotions are in sync, right? And then the other piece here, the question that I have is, Charlores is a badass bitch that's in charge of fucking everything, or so we think. Is it that she was going to lose control of this world, or there's something she had to do to give this power to Christina, that something happened? Because why would she not just take over? Is it that she can't, and that Christina actually has the power in this world and Charlores doesn't? Because they're the same person.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, but you got to remember, she keeps espousing that the hosts have free will. Men in Black, hosts have free will. That's what humans would do. They would make you transcend. But a lot of what she's done and the system she's put in place and this perfect harmony, this perfect world is anything but free will. So the world she has set up and established that we've seen for the host is not free will. It's her version of free will. And the Man in Black tells his host version the same thing. This isn't reality. This is her reality. And I just want to remind the listeners where we last saw Teddy physically. In season 2, in the penultimate episode, he chooses to kill himself because he could not live with the changes that Dolores had made to his character. Dolores, then we find out later, had then uploaded him into the sublime. So him coming back into the real world, I see only 4 possible ways we can explain this. That New York City is a sublime, okay? And this would fit the description that we got from Christina's boss, that it is a complete closed system, a walled garden, that it wasn't just the city, that it was the entire existence is that. Option 2, I see, Teddy has been removed from the Valley Beyond and given a new body to go contact Christina. 3, this is not actually the real Teddy. Or 4, which I think is the most likely, but could be a bit crazy, that Teddy is an agent of Charlores, meant to guide and ultimately test Chrissy. Because when Chrissy meets with Teddy, and then goes to the meeting, and Charlores seems disappointed that she's not open and honest, there may be a problem-solving process that Charlores is going through. She's trying to come up with, why are there 38 dead hosts? Why is her system not working? Is the defect actually being caused by Christina? And Teddy would be a way to find out if she is truly the Judas steer and directing the herd away from her.
I think with 3 episodes left, that question is definitely going to be answered. And I get the feeling that it's not going to be answered until the very end. So at least we have that little bit of spice for our season finale. Fingers crossed. Now it's time for another round of Explain Me This. We talked in the Instacast about so many questions that came up during this episode that we couldn't quite explain. And people always say, have faith in the show, have faith in the showrunners. You're going to wait and see. And so I'm going to do my best, and I hope you guys can join me here to explain some of these key questions that just seem like nonsense in the episode, but might have perfectly good explanations. The first one, as you mentioned, Big D, is at that crime scene. Humans are holding poses for like 10 minutes the way hosts can. I was trying to figure out if that was even physically possible. So I looked into it. The world record for motionlessness without a cane, there's also one for with a cane, but let's go without a cane because we didn't see anybody using a cane here, 30 hours. But that's not mid-stride. That's just standing still. The only thing I could think of is that these guys get frozen so many times during the course of their day that they've just gotten really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, if we've learned nothing from Harry Potter, I feel like we probably learned from the Imperio Curse that, like, the nervous system, if you can tap into it, you can make somebody do whatever you want. And I think that's what we're seeing here is whatever's happening with these vibrations, it's affecting the nervous system and it's affecting their ability to move. I think the perfect example of this is that couple at dinner at the beginning where they're like, oh, it looks delicious. And they want to move, but they can't. Like they're physically restrained from being able to move. I think it's the same thing. And Mad-Eye Moody makes that spider do some weird shit. That's the same science here.
But the host, we believe, when they were frozen, it's almost like they were offline. The humans are continuing to experience the world. Do you then wake up and remember, fuck, I was just dancing?
Or that your fingers are bloody from playing the piano?
Yeah.
Good question, Big D. And the answer is no. So we find out in this episode, as the Man in Black says, that their memory seals up like a splinter wound. Basically, whatever happened to them, much like the hosts in the park,
Oh, yeah. Good point.
the memory can be essentially wiped or expunged. Question 2. Why would the extraction team take a boat when time was of the essence? And how did they take a boat from Nevada? Now, several listeners wrote in about this topic, explaining that we might not be in New York City at all. Instead, this might be a park resembling Manhattan. If you think about it, the original Westworld could build the Old West in Asia on the ocean. Why not build a New York City anywhere? Perhaps somewhere close to the desert.
Agreed. And there's even a comment that Charlores makes during the dancing sequence that the Man in Black says, you hate coming to the parks. And she says, yes, I hate coming to the shithole. That I took that as an implication after reading this, Gene, that there are multiple parks and you wouldn't necessarily have to put it in the original location geographically.
So question 3, we noticed that the rebels, when they hit the city, stuck out like a sore thumb. Why travel as a team when you're extracting an outlier? And why would you take Stubbs, a host, on such a sensitive mission if you don't trust him? The only thing I could come up with was the cause might always move as a pack to reduce the chances of one member being replaced by a host. You think if you send one guy on a mission or one woman on a mission and they come back, you never know if they're a host or not. As Big D mentioned, they don't have Terminator dogs or scanners, so maybe that's the case.
Well, I don't have an answer for that first part, but I think with Stubbs, they call him a canary in the coal mine. I think it's they know he can hear the sound pulses. He'll know when like they're being affected, and you would think that would mean that they would stop fucking moving when they start running through. Like you think they would respond to it, but I think that's why they bring him.
What happens now? I just thought of what if you're rollerblading? What if you're rollerblading? You get brum, brum, brum. Do you just keep coasting?
In an earlier episode, we saw somebody on a bicycle. And of course, they conveniently already had it on its kickstand and we're in the process of getting off of it. And I thought that would have been the funniest Westworld moment if she froze it and bicycle guy just goes slamming into a wall in the background.
And Ash is a lover of The Leftovers. You remember when the people disappeared, the cars everywhere in town, car crash, crash. You got to explain that away. There'd be countless accidents, people falling downstairs. Every time you froze the world, there would be countless deaths.
But do they have cars?
This is why we can't give in to self-driving cars. We'll never know if our world's being frozen. And speaking of the extraction team, I also wondered, how did they survive a whole city once the Man in Black alerted New York residents to the team's presence, right? There's millions of people in New York, and we've seen at least hundreds of them this season. The only thing I think of is that they were meant to escape. Now, listener R21174 on YouTube shared a theory that Jay went into that stairwell solo and there was a shadow in the stairwell. And perhaps Jay, Daniel Wu, was replaced by a host.
I just think this is dumb and lazy. Like, I don't think that there's a good reason for it. I just think that it's stupid.
Gene, wouldn't it be great if the rebels had some kind of tester or brought a dog or had someone? Then it's simple enough. Hey, let's scan them. Shoo, 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 shoo. You're clear to go.
Oh, wait, they're all outliers.
Well, no, I don't think I think they were just never part of. They were the last free humans. They're free range.
And my final question about the extraction team is when Jay shoots the man in black, he goes down. So the man in black seems to be knocked out by gunfire. He's not seriously wounded, but he's also incapacitated. And I couldn't figure out why. The only two things I could come up with was the percussive force of being shot just knocked him down and he needed a second to recover. Or perhaps the overloading of the nerves with pain causes hosts to short out and reboot.
I don't know. The only thing I could think is maybe this is, evidence that he's less than the original host. Like he's cognitively advanced, but not combat advanced.
Or maybe this was some kind of a special load, like some kind of like a shock load. It's like an EMP blast. It's not just bullets. It's something that's meant to take out the host. But again, why not use your greatest ally, gravity? Push his ass off the side of the building. Yeah, man in black, explode on the pavement below. Let's take our time getting out of the city.
And finally, we see in this episode that Christina has to write everyone in the world. And I'm thinking, how long would that take? Because she does less work than a marketing copywriter. We've seen her work like 5 minutes this entire season. She doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot. She takes a lot of personal time. She hangs around her apartment. She goes on trips. At the pace she's working, I think it would take years.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this is proof that she somehow is related to Charlores and like Charlores created part of it and like she's actually part of her. So this is all her identity, and intellectual property becomes really complicated with all of these scenarios. But maybe it just shows her connection.
Her narratives are boring. She is like a Hallmark card, like a Lifetime network. This city would be filled with lonely women who are artistic, taking care of their dads who have ailments.
Sign me up.
The entire city would be this boring place of people with their infirm dads.
I'm going. That's all there is to it. I'm fucking going.
Dude, you'd be popular there. All these lonely women would be looking out their window. Who's that handsome, long-haired man? Daddy, I'm going out for a minute. I'll be back.
Dads do love me.
So going on to the 38 host suicides, Hope, her complaint about the humans was that they just would not stop talking, that they wouldn't shut up, and the things they were saying was bothering her. And it brought me back to that inner monologue thing where I'm questioning whether or not the humans' conversations are causing the host to somehow ask themselves questions that they don't know the answer. But I hope we get to the answer to why these 38 hosts glitched. But I love the fact that it was people's incessant talking, that they just wouldn't shut up, that drove them off the edge.
I wanted to talk about Lou Reed. I've complained and praised the way music is used in Westworld. I loved when they used Radiohead. I do not so much like when they do piano things during heists. But speeding up Lou Reed's Perfect Day is a crime against humanity. It is not a song that is intended to be peppy. It is not a song that should be fucked with in any way. Shame on you, Westworld. And that's not the lowest point in this episode. The outlier with the flower is like the worst ending to a character who could have given us an entire episode. Westworld writers, if you're listening out there, give us an entire episode about that guy. Make it a 9-episode season. What's his life all about? What does the world look like to him? Instead, we get this one real thing. Pop! Like, it was so predictable. He was around for so long, obviously out there. Where did they find that guy? The performance was god-awful.
Well, it could be like Westworld, the sitcom. You get to see him in his marriage, his job, the divorce, how he fell into the spot he's in now. It could be a really interesting set of episodes.
Y'all, I wanted to throw up during this scene. Like, it was like those paintings that they sell in the French Quarter of like the sad clowns that are holding like a magnolia. Like it was so bad. So bad.
Sarah jumped when Hope shot him, and I seriously just stared at her with utter disdain.
As you should have.
Like, there's no jump scare there. We knew where that was going. I even knew that he was going to get cut off by a gunshot.
Of course he was.
That's how obvious that scene was. Next up, Charlores. We keep asking about Charlores, the mastermind, and why she would be this like mustache twirling villain or have wild gaps in her logic and her security scheme. I think we're missing something very obvious here that the show is trying to tell us over and over again. They're signaling through her scratching her skin and other tics that she's gone a little off the deep end. And we keep acting like she's okay. She got blown up. She lost her quote unquote family. We should expect her behavior to be erratic, nonsensical, cruel, whatever you want to call it, anything but logical.
Yeah, and you remember where the skin peeling started from. It's Dolores in a Hale body. She never truly worked through all those problems and the emotional component of losing her child, the explosion. But yeah, she may have been a good wartime general to win the war. But as far as leading the after, she's doing a shitty job.
Well, and I think, again, this may be giving even more proof that, like, Christina had to be created because she's cuckoo.
I like it. And then finally, the initiate diagnostic line. I don't know if you guys picked that up. I mean, surely you did with the many rewatches. But as Charlores is left in the room by herself and she says initiate diagnostic, do you guys think that was a throwaway line? What was that all about?
I think it's them letting us know that something's wrong with her and put that next to what the man in black is going through, where he says, you know, because it seems like it's a joke when she says, like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, well, I've run, 3 diagnostics on myself. Like, I think there's something off with them. Like, something is wrong. Maybe it is an infection. I don't know, but something's off.
I had totally forgotten about that. You're absolutely right. Well, we're all out of time for this deep dive, so please write in with your thoughts on what we talked about today or anything that we might have missed. You can reach us at hosts@shatontv.com. You can also leave us a voicemail at shatpod.com/TV using the SpeakPipe feature. Big D has upped the time.
Yes, against Gene Lyon's wishes. I thought I'd like to give you people a little more time. Gene wants you to be more concise. So this is like your parents letting you stay at home for the weekend. If you people start leaving crazy-ass, long, incoherent messages, Gene Lyons is going to take away your 3 minutes.
I rarely do this, but I may have been wrong to begin with because Ken L., before you even up the time limit, left a 6-part voicemail. So maybe this will get us down. It'll be the same amount of recording time, but maybe it'll only be like a 4-part voicemail.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Deep Dive. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatpod.com/TV. Again, you can email us, hosts@shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on Friday for the Westworld Telegraph.
this is actually a great episode.